Well, hello everyone and welcome. We are going to get things started here momentarily. I'm going to go ahead and allow the participant attendee list to everybody get in there. Good afternoon, good morning if you're still on the West Coast. Good afternoon if you're here in the Mountain Time Zone or you're heading east there, the Central Time Zone, Eastern Time Zone, maybe internationally. Again, good afternoon, good morning. We'll get started here momentarily, give folks a chance to jump into the meeting. This is the Managed Methods webinar to discuss the FCC Cybersecurity pilot program. So we'll get underway here. Looks like people are jumping in. I'll give it just maybe another 30 seconds because it's still filling up. Hello, seeing some familiar names out there. It would be kind of fun if we could have two-way cameras on so we could go around the room and say hello to everybody, because I see a lot of familiar names out there, friends of the Managed Methods family. It's good to see some of the names out there. Hello. Got a fresh haircut for today. Looking fresh here. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get underway. Again, hello and welcome. My name's David. I'm going to be your host through today's webinar. This is the Managed Methods webinar focused on how we here at Managed Methods can help you differentiate your FCC Cybersecurity Pilot Program application, but more importantly, to make sure that everyone is aware of this program and that people are talking about this program and they're going to get involved in this program. That's the important thing we want. We want people to participate. You know, you got to get out there and participate because the FCC needs to see all of you into this program. So let's get underway here. Just a couple housekeeping items. As always, if you attend one of our webinars, this is familiar to you. It is being recorded. You will receive a link to the webinar. Usually it's about 24 hours, but sometimes Zoom might take a little longer to process the recordings afterwards. Any and all questions, everybody's muted, so any and all questions, please put them into the Q&A, the chat, and you can throw them out there throughout the whole presentation, but we may not get to all of them until we get further into the Q&A towards the end of the session, okay? Pretty straightforward, pretty standard stuff. So let's talk about today's agenda. I've got a couple colleagues here that are going to be joining me that are going to help facilitate, and they're really going to be the star of the show later. We're going to first start out by talking about the pilot program itself. What is it, for those of you that maybe are not familiar? Then we're going to get into a demonstration of our platforms, our solutions, and how we fit into the mix. And then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. Of course, at any point in time, folks, again, throw your questions into the chat, and some of the team members may respond as we get going through that. Okay, so let's dive in. What is this conversation about? The FCC Cybersecurity pilot program overview. If you've been under a rock, maybe you haven't heard about this yet. It's been all the buzz this summer, but I know that everybody's was busy getting ready for back to school. It's a brand new program that was introduced back in the spring by the FCC as a response to all of the cries to expand E-rate for years and years. You know, everybody agrees E-rate needs to be expanded. This is the FCC's experiment to determine, okay, what do we need to expand? What do we need to add into? So it's a 3-year program. Keep that in mind. This is a 3-year program, but you get one chance to apply, and that's going to be this fall. We'll talk about that here in a minute. $200 million total in the pool to eligible K-12 entities and libraries over the 3 years. So it's not a huge pool. It's $200 million spread out over 3 years for this very, very large group of potential applicants, but it's better than nothing. So what can you qualify for? And there's been a lot of, I think, miscommunication or misunderstanding. Again, it's a 3-year program, and it's up to $40.80 per student with minimums of $45,000 and a maximum of $4.5 million. And again, that's across a scale of little small schools all the way up to the biggest schools. Basically, that breaks down to essentially $13.60 per student per year. And I think that's what a lot of people were caught on. They're like, oh, I had somebody say to me once, hey, it's only $13.60. I said, per year. So over the 3 years, it's $40.80 per kiddo. And remember, it's a 3-year program. The administrative window just opened up this past Monday. So on Monday, the administrative window opened up. What that means is the administrative window is where you as an applicant, a potential applicant, or even potential vendors, service providers, can go in and start getting early preparation. Now, the application window is not open yet, so don't panic. The application window has not been announced yet. It's believed it's going to be sometime here in early September. But the administrative window to go in and get all your early paperwork taken care of, the first phase of Form 44, etc. There's a whole guide that you can get from us, and it's out there on the FCC's website as well as the USAC website. So eligibility. This has been a big question that folks have asked us here at ManagedMethods, and I've heard as I've gone to conferences and sat down and talked with leaders in this. If you're eligible for E-rate, if your school district has participated in E-rate, your entity has done E-rate before, then you're good to go. You're going to be eligible for this. However, if you've never participated in E-rate, that still doesn't mean that you can't participate in this. They are separate programs from each other, but just know that if we've done E-rate before, okay, we're eligible for this, we can go ahead and start our application process. If you've never done E-rate, you can still get into this through the eligibility programs, but you need to understand, you might have to do a little more paperwork to get set up with. If you have received E-rate this past year and you're planning to receive, E-rate next year, it doesn't disqualify you. Again, this is a separate program. I think there's been a lot of confusion. I've heard people call this the E-rate cybersecurity program. It's not. It's just from the FCC. They're both coming from the same organization, but they're separate programs, separate application processes. You cannot, though, apply for funds for solutions that you've already been funded for by E-rate. The eligible service list, the eligible categories are completely different, and we'll get into that here momentarily. There's been a lot of questions about, I've talked to some smaller schools that have told me, well, I don't even know if I want to apply for this because I probably won't qualify. Everyone should apply. I always say it's like the lottery. You're never gonna get a chance at winning if you don't, get yourself a lottery ticket. And this is a big lottery, but you should try. And this is the point. Everybody needs to cast their voice, put their vote out there, cast their voice, let the FCC hear what's happening out there. There is going to be a lot of, evaluation process. They want to spread this out amongst big schools, small schools, rural, city, urban, etc. Lower income tribal applicants are going to be prioritized, and that's going to be based on if you look at your school lunch program and the free and reduced school lunch, that's another aspect to keep in mind. You can apply as a part of a consortium. However, you cannot double apply. So if you're planning to apply through a consortium, maybe a county office of ed or an education service center, education service district, a BOCES, etc., you can do that through the consortium, but you cannot then apply as an independent district. So keep that in mind. You have to either apply on your own for your district, or you can apply through a consortium. The eligible services that are out there. This is where, again, this program came about. E-rate needs to be expanded. The FCC is saying, hey, let's try this pilot program and see what people are asking for. The prevailing winds from all the conferences I've been at this summer, listening to many presentations about this, listening to many experts talk about this. Everyone knows that Category 1 here has been talked about for years and years and years, that needs to be added into E-rate. The prevailing winds, though, are that these other 3 categories are arguably more important now as we move forward. And these are the areas that I believe that the FCC really wants to hear about. And again, this is it's not a published fact, but again, the experts I've listened to out there, especially consulting firms that specialize in E-rate, they're advising, hey, don't just do an application for something in Category 1 here. Look at the other 3 categories and sprinkle that out, because everyone is probably going to be going in there. And if you want to differentiate yourself, you really need to probably look at making sure you have your application in multiple categories, especially categories 2, 3, and 4. You can expand your application to include items from any of the categories, and that's highly encouraged, because the more unique your application is, the higher the likelihood that you might get selected, because they want to see, again, a diversity of urban, city, rural, different income levels, different geographic regions, and they want to see projects happening in all of those 4 categories. So why is the FCC doing this? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that the FCC is recognizing that now we need to look at how do we expand the eligible service list? How do we help schools who are reliant more and more on cloud technology in everything they do? We know that technology departments, have notoriously been, under-resourced. They don't have the staffing. They don't have necessarily the expertise in cybersecurity. They definitely don't have the revenue, the money to go out and afford some of the cybersecurity products and services and expertise that's there. And now, over these last 5, 6, 7 years or so, the education community has been under attack. I mean, you cannot ignore the fact that the education community is a sitting duck, and has now consistently been ranked in the top 5 most targeted, most vulnerable when it comes to cyber attacks. I mean, you look at the media, and we're almost numb to it now, because there's so many headlines out there, and it's constantly happening. I just was watching just the evening news last night, trying to check the sports and weather right before I go to bed, and there was a news story about a cyber incident, right here in our home state in Colorado. So it's everywhere. You cannot ignore it. So why are we talking about this? Why us? Why ManagedMethods? Why are we talking about this? Because we are here to help, and we fit into this world very, very nicely for what this program's about. Those of you, there's many of you on the call that are friendly faces, friendly names. Your customers of ManagedMethods, you've been with us for a long time, but I know there's a lot of folks that are not familiar with us. Who's ManagedMethods? What do we do? We provide cybersecurity and student safety and compliance and data protection to schools, from the browser to the cloud to the mailbox to the classroom to the drive, you name it. We've been in this business now a little over 10 years, had our product in the market approximately 7.5 years, and we serve over 6,500 schools across the United States, Canada, and a handful of international, with over 4.5 million user accounts being secured in that. And we're super excited to be a part of this, process to help guide you down this journey. And we want to just make sure that you're not only aware that this program exists, but that we can help you with this. And how can we benefit you in this program process? We can help you differentiate your application. Again, not saying that advanced next-gen firewalls are not important. I'm just saying that don't put all your cookies, in that jar. Make sure that you spread the eggs out amongst the baskets, because we are eligible in 2 of the categories that we'll talk about here momentarily. We are very affordable, and we have very transparent pricing and implementation, and we will work with you through this entire process, whether you do the FCC pilot program or not. And through that, we are going to talk about more, and we'll demonstrate how we can give you customized policies for automating many of the repetitive cybersecurity tasks, and they fall across many of the subcategories within 2 of the buckets. And we're purpose built for K-12, so you don't have to have cybersecurity expertise. You may be an IT generalist. We're going to give you an easy, intuitive platform to help you get through this process. And we'll talk about it, because what we're going to do here is later give you a demonstration, and we're going to help you across 2 eligible service categories and many, many subcategories through our suite of products, led by our flagship product, Cloud Monitor, for Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, and then our content filter and classroom management solutions that help protect the devices, the browsers, the kiddos, and the experience to ensure education is seamless and keeps going without cybersecurity interruptions. So where do we fall into, and what are my colleagues going to talk about here momentarily as we're doing the demonstration? These are the 2 categories that we sit front and center: identity protection and authentication, and then the monitoring, detection, and response category. And we cover several subcategories, if you would. Everything from cloud application protection to content blocking, URL filtering, to DLP, vulnerability scanning, etc. So a lot of things. We're going to get into a lot of different things here. So let me get things turned over and introduce my colleagues. Before we do so, I'm going to remind you that everything they're going to show you today is eligible for a free trial. We'll come into your organization and work with you hand in hand and get you prepared for this process to apply for the FCC program. Even if you don't apply or you don't apply with our products in the mix, we welcome the opportunity to work with you, experience the benefits with a free 30-day trial. Remember, you'll be getting a copy of this, but you can also just go to ManagedMethods.com. So let me introduce two outstanding individuals, Charles Mogan and John Bingham. They are going to be walking you through here a demonstration of our products. So John Bingham, Charles Mogan, let you guys take it away here, and then I'll be here to help answer questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so you guys can share your screen, and we'll get into it.
Thank you for that introduction, David.
All right. I see it. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. As David said, my name is John Brigham. So I will be one of your guys through our platform today. Chuck, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and click into Google. As we start off today, what I'd like to use is an organic 5-star review from one of our friends, Matthew Fredrickson, over at Council Rock School District in Pennsylvania. He has almost 11,000 students, and honestly, he laid out our platform almost better than we can in 3 easy steps, right? So 1, we're an awesome security tool. We give you in-depth access into these accounts, help you stay on top of potential threats. 2, we're a safety tool. So if you have students who may be, suffering, whether socially or emotionally, we help you stay on top of that, shed some light, right? And then 3rd, we're an infrastructure tool. So obviously, you know that you have your own internal processes. So use us to spot check. Make sure you don't have any weird accounts out there. Make sure you have, enough storage, right? You don't have someone redlining your storage. All right. So from his own words, it's one of the best decisions he made, right? And the demo was the game changer. So obviously we have a lot of bells and whistles that we can show you today, but the best thing to do is to get in a one-on-one demo so we can actually show you what it'll look like inside of your environment. All right, Chuck, let's go ahead and jump up to the risk section. All right. Now, our risk inside of Managed Methods, the way that we define that is any sensitive information inside of your environment. So this is really going to be used for that DLP, right? And also you can use it for student safety. So I love a good story. One of our friends, Jeff Collins, over at Plainfield Community School Corp in Indiana, he said one of his biggest pain points were finding large files related to Google Drive around PII, which is that personally identifiable information, and also students doing inappropriate things inside of your drive. Right. So this is what we're here for, to shed some light on that. As you can see, what Chuck is highlighting here, the name of the products, the type of risk scan, when it was scanned, and who the file owner email sender is. Chuck, let's go ahead and click on one. All right, so there you go in plain text. That is a social security number. If you need a little bit more color, you can go ahead and get a preview so you can actually see what you're looking at here, right? That's something you never want to run across, right? Why is it just sitting out there inside of your drive? On the left-hand side, you'll see all the pertinent information, who's owning the file, who they shared it with, where is it being held, right? And then if for any reason it had some weird link shares, you can also see that there as well, right? Now, 2 words that I actually co-opted from one of my account executives is visibility and control. Right? So visibility, you're seeing all of this. Control, Chuck, go ahead and click actions. You can download that file in question if you need a little bit more color. Delete it absolutely out of your environment. We don't need that stuff here. Quarantine it if you need time to investigate. Put it off to the side for a little bit. You can always restore it back, right? Chuck, let's go ahead and close this out. All right, now this is PII, looking at things like Social Security. And believe it or not, we see a lot of stuff like this because unfortunately, teachers get way too comfortable sometimes, and they are leaving things like files that say PW for all their passwords. Why would you ever store anything like that? What I always like to say is it is free to make an email account. So you should never be storing any of this information inside of your drive. Now, we also said student safety. Chuck, let's go ahead and choose that machine learning model, right? And this time, let's select that top one. This is an email now. So now, first thing that stands out is you can set off more than one risk scan. So for any reason, if you set off like a keyword phrase-based model like the self-harm strict, or a machine learning model, self-harm, or even an image risk, we're going to let you know every single risk it's set off. Once again, you can always preview the document if you need to. All right, go ahead and close this out. Now that this is an email, or Chuck, let's go ahead and go back really quick. Now that this is an email, you can also see all the pertinent information, if it's being sent, who's it being sent to, and that attachments. So at the end of the day, the email could say, have a great day, but then the attachment could be where the risk is. We will scan attachments as well and let you know, hey, this is where the risk is, right? Go ahead and close that out. And now if we scroll up to the top here, Chuck, what I want you to do is go ahead and click that gear wheel icon next to enable risk. So as I said before, visibility and control, all right? So why do I say visibility and control? Because the visibility, whatever you want to look for. We have pre-made scans, but you can build a scan to look for whatever you need to. For some reason, kids were eating Tide Pods back then. All right, well, let me know if that comes up. If anyone has their routing numbers just sitting in your drive, hey, please let us know, right? So visibility, whatever you want to look for, and how we define that again, drive files, Gmail, shared drive, and even classroom announcements. So you turn this on, that is where we're looking for any of that sensitive information. All right, go ahead and close this out. Now, as we said, visibility. So let's give you a little bit more visibility into your workspace. Chuck, let's go ahead and go over to those applications. All right. Now, you all might know me by now. I love a great story. Miss Ginger Jackson over at Cleveland County Schools in North Carolina, she said, we make it so easy for you to find the simple things like TikTok and OnlyFans. Well, on top of that, we can also show you the things that you didn't even know you needed to be on the lookout for, right? Search for your application by name, by app category, by the scopes, right? So how much permission and what permission does it have? What scope is it using, right? You can even search by your organizational unit. So if you just want to look for the kids, okay? Now, if we close that and go back to this main page here, you're seeing all the apps, right? Now, Chuck, if you'll do me a favor, let's come over and click on that scope category. Yes, sir. So as you can see, what scope, how much permission does it have, right? Click off of that and let's go over to the organizational unit. See very quickly who's using this particular application, right? Now, so do me a favor, let's go ahead and click on that number 4 under users. All right. So you can also go directly to the app summary page. From here in the upper right-hand corner, if you ever need to, go ahead and download a CSV report. You can send that on to do your reporting if you need to send that up the food chain. If you're not familiar with the application, and here's the kicker, we're not just looking at apps, we're looking at applications, single sign-on, and extensions. So even if you're saying, hey, John, we should have this blocked, what's going on? At the end of the day, we're not trying to be Big Brother. We're just saying, again, it's free to make an email, so stop using our account to log into these apps. Hey, that description will let you know what the app is or take you over to the website. And then finally, you might say, you know what, this is approved for staff members, but I don't want any students on here. Go ahead and selectively revoke your users, right? Now, Chuck, if we can go ahead and go back one more time, just get back to that main page. The last thing that I'll point out here is obviously, you know, there are some applications that might fall under categories like social or gaming or things like that. You see that little icon right next to auto IT with the check mark? That is letting us know, hey, we have approved this application for usage. So you have the ability to say, they can use this app that may fall under games, but we're going to go ahead and just wipe out all that Pokemon Go and everything like that. So again, visibility and control, see what you have inside of your environment, control, get it out of there, right? Now, with all that being said, these are your applications. I'm going to pass the mic to Chuck for a little bit so he can talk to you all about our account activity.
Excellent. Thank you, John, for that introduction there. So one of the other major areas that's going to fall under the cloud application protection is going to be login activity. One of the big issues we see in both Google and in Microsoft are login events, especially on student accounts, which don't usually have as secure passwords. Sometimes they can even happen on staff accounts as well too. But we have a tool in the platform here called the Login Analyzer, which is going to pull through that login data and allow you to run some different filters and searches to really narrow down what you're looking at. And a couple of our school districts have found this especially beneficial. Our friends over at Lufkin ISD and Tyler Butler there has used this constantly to look for potential logins from outside the US. And that's how we have this filtering set up. So it's logins within the United States are considered approved, logins from outside the US are considered unapproved. So if we come in here and apply that filter here, you're then presented with a login events that are from outside the US here. One of our other school districts that's found this very beneficial is Clint ISD and Michael Tapia over there. One of the things he found out when he was starting to look through this login activity and the log events is he realized they had huge issues with students where they were logging in from Paraguay, Ecuador, Japan, and other countries. And that's sometimes a common issue we see where sometimes it's not just a student using a VPN and causing problems, but where an account has actually been compromised. And we've certainly seen a larger number of data breaches and things like that that have happened where we've seen more compromised accounts. So when we're looking at the data here, you're going to be presented with a date and timestamp, who logged in, IP address in question, where in the world were they, and then also in parentheses here is going to be the internet service provider. So then from there, you can click into the event type itself and see what information do they use to get into the account. Was it their password? Was it some other method of accessing the account? And then we can even run the IP address against a database called SPUR to see if it's part of any publicly known about VPNs or proxies or things like that. So for example, here, if I go ahead and grab a specific country here, I'll see if we've got some good examples of this one, or actually I'll go ahead and come over here and grab a specific ISP here. Oops. We can go ahead and look for those kinds of different things as well too, and then run those against that Have I Been Pwned database here, or sorry, the SPUR database here to see if they're part of any potential proxies or VPNs. Or in some cases, we'll get something like this where it's possibly anonymous, and we can see here it's owned by a data center here. So probably not your user actually accessing the account in that case, or potentially using a VPN here. From there, we could potentially grab one of these accounts here quite quickly, hop into the account section itself here, paste in that user, and then if we click into the user itself, or even look from here, we've got options here to quickly suspend the account or reset the password, and that will take that action as if you're doing that in Google and Microsoft. You can then click into the account itself, and you'll be presented with the login data of that user as a whole. There's ways to pull some reports here in Google to further look at the account. But also here we have the Have I Been Pwned tool here, which is really great to see if the user is part of any publicly known about data breaches. Just this morning, I had a call with a district where we looked at an account, looked like it had some kind of funky login activity. Clicked on the Have I Been Pwned. Turned out that account was part of a recent data breach where a bunch of data had been posted to Telegram, which contains email addresses and passwords. In the case that account had been compromised, so they went through their process then of getting that account password reset and the credentials changed there. So from there as well too, one of the common things we see when an account gets compromised, especially on student accounts, is where the bad actors like to go right away is email. There's a lot of things they can do with email. They like to send over usually phishing emails is the common thing. And this is again where the platform can help out in the side of the email and web security and also that cloud application protection. So we have an interface here that's going to be taking a look at email activity. So we'll certainly be identifying those risks as John mentioned there earlier. We also do have a phishing and a malware component. On the phishing side, we'll be looking for phishing URLs via Google Web Risk API and PhishTank. And then the malware side, we'll be using Avaria here. In this case, in this particular section of Gmail, looking for those email attachments. But we also do look at drive files as well as shared drive files. Same thing over in Microsoft, looking at OneDrive, looking at Outlook, looking at SharePoint Teams. From here, you can take a look at emails just generally. There's some different ways you can pull information down. You can preview it. You can look at headers of the emails if you need to for whatever reason. You can even download them as PDFs, and you can go through and also just outright delete emails or quarantine them, and that can be done on up to 10 entries at a time here. The important tool here, and this is something that exists in both Google and Microsoft, though, is the live email search. What this allows you to do is go ahead and track down any specific emails you need to find. A couple limitations there. We can't find emails that have been completely deleted from the domain, and this doesn't work with any accounts that have been suspended. So the account does have to be active. But you can put in whatever specific search criteria you're looking for here. You can even just grab a single user, and then if you go ahead and press that search here, it's going to go ahead and find the accounts in question here that meet your search criteria, and you'll be able to quickly see those emails. And it's not just visibility with these emails. You can see some similar icons here to pull those emails down and look at them, but you can also come through and outright delete those emails as well. And this is a really helpful feature if you get a spear phishing attack, or somebody sends an email domain wide that they shouldn't have, maybe an email with sensitive information. Or I've even seen situations where when someone replied all on an email thread and it keeps causing issues that way. You can go through there and find those emails and remove them from everyone's inboxes quite quickly. So this works really well for those kinds of situations or scenarios there. Also just great for general investigation into email as well too. So a lot of times when we see compromised accounts, we might see odd emails or things like that going to the outside. Sometimes situations where the emails are even written in different languages. That's a pretty popular one where they'll use a student account and then send emails out in a different language. So last component I'm going to talk about here before I pass it over to my colleague John here is just going to be the malware section here. I'm actually going to hop over to the Microsoft side for just a moment here. So when we're looking at the malware side of things here, we use Avaria as our malware scanning engine. And again, we're going to be looking at things within the Microsoft side, within OneDrive, within Outlook, within SharePoint Teams, over in Google. That's going to be Drive files, Gmail attachments, and then shared Drive files. When the platform finds something, it's going to stick into one of two categories. It's going to stick in either malicious or suspicious. If this was an active piece of malware, I could click the drop-down arrow there. I could be presented with what it was flagged as. I could download a report from Avaria as why it got flagged. And then there's options even to click in here, just get basic information. Now, the platform is not going to let you download anything that's been flagged as malware. We do that by design. But then you do have options to come in here and actually take actions. You can outright delete things. You can quarantine things, which will transfer ownership over. Or you can outright ignore things if it was a false positive, which sometimes happens, but is pretty infrequent. And certainly we've seen some incidents pop up. I've seen an email where someone was trying to impersonate the FBI. It was clearly something that didn't look legitimate. And then there was another one where a superintendent had been blind carbon copied on an email that looked pretty fishy, had an odd PDF attached to it. So those are the kinds of things where you can get those removed quite quickly, and you can even automate that via policy there. So, with that being said, I'm going to hop back over into the platform here, and specifically over into the Drive Files tab here, and pass it back over to my colleague John.
All right, thank you very much, Chuck. So this is one of my favorite tabs to show because this gets really into the weeds as far as investigating what's going on inside of your environment. Lots of our customers, I'm going to give a special shout out to Prince Edward County School in Virginia. They say we make it so much easier for them to find things and get rid of it, take care of it. Hey, one of my favorite words, visibility and control, right? So they had a teacher that shared about 100 different files that were actually personal things. And again, that's what we find, you get too comfortable and you start storing passwords inside of your environment, right? Well, they were able to go in, find all of those things and take care of it in about 5-10 minutes. Whereas before it took so much longer. But as Chuck is showing you right here, that quick, you can go ahead and change the share permissions of that file, right? Now, with all of that being said, this also gives you great visibility into your actual Google workspace. So while these files here are 30 days, 90 days with any risk associated, go ahead and click on that live file search. These files here, this is going to do a live API call. So as long as the files exist inside of your environment, you can go ahead and find that here, right? Chuck, I actually was going to do another one. Do me a favor. Let's go to student 3, right? Because it's always kids. And guys, here's another story. I love a good story, right? Yesterday, we actually had someone go through their environment and say, hey, John, can we do a partial search? I said, sure. They decided to look for proxy. Why? Because last year there was a student ring that was, and I'm probably ruining our Friday newsletter, so sorry guys, but there's literally a student ring that was selling proxies for $30 a link, and they were making a grip off of that. Come on now, we can all go to Google and find those same accounts, but still, they had a whole business inside of the drive and the staff didn't even know about it, right? Chuck, do me a favor. Let's do a search again, right? And I want you to just do audio video files. Okay, go ahead and do a search. Now, this is one of my favorites to do because, oh man, this poor kid, he's a Saints fan and a Steelers fan. I mean, that life is just rough. Let's actually go ahead and go to the last page here because as long as the file has not been completely deleted or removed, that is a 4-year-old 2 GB copy of Avatar sitting inside of your environment, right? So again, visibility, find all this stuff, and you see all this pertinent information. So if you can get it out, if it's internal, external, the user permissions. And once we close this down, you can come over to the actions column, quarantine, take ownership of it, download it, delete it, revoke the share, add a share, and my favorite button, go ahead and click that audit file. 6 months back, you can see anyone who's touched that file, whether they added it to a folder, deleted it, renamed it, whatever. You have that audit activity right there, right? So a lot of power in here. Again, this is one of my favorite things to show because that control aspect, right? Control, right? Here you go. So next thing over, finishing up talking about control, Chuck. Oh yeah, actually, let's go over to the managed drives. Go ahead and put that same student in. Now, on the Files tab, you have the ability to actually change the file permission. Over here, go ahead and change those folder permissions. So, oh, a grunge rock session. Nah, I'm gonna go ahead and make myself the owner of that. You don't need to be storing that. But hey, good on that kid for even knowing what grunge means, right? All right. Let's go ahead and close this out. All right, so again, when I find things, I like to beat it to death, basically. So sticking with control, Chuck, let's go over to our policy violations. All right. And so here, this is where you can now start building out policies to act on your behalf. First things first, you're going to get a summary email every 4 hours to say, hey, here's what you missed in the past 4 hours, right? If you're saying, hey, that might be a little too steep a time frame, that on violation, notify admin. When that's selected, you're going to get notified as soon as the policy's tripped up, right? Now, to the left, you'll see remediation. By default, everything is set to look, don't touch because we want you to decide how you want to handle it. But if it's a dry file, go ahead and delete it. You can quarantine it. You can revoke the share, and you can send out a warning to the user. If it's a shared drive file, you can delete the files. You can warn your user. And then last but not least, for email, we cannot stop email from leaving your environment. Where I tell people to use delete email and quarantine email is when things are entering your environment, because then you can absolutely gatekeep your environment. You're tired of all those spam emails, put that spam domain in a policy and delete those emails. If you want to check and make sure it's not a risk before you fully release it, go ahead and quarantine that email. So we'll move it to the trash until you're ready to release it, right? And then lastly, you can always warn them. So warn the sender, the recipient, and the CC, right? The last policy I'm gonna touch on this screen here, Chuck, the image risk for me, or actually self-harm. That was perfect. Go down to self-harm. You see that send email to right there? So here, if you have your counselors, your principals, your student resource officers that you would want to respond to these things instead of yourself, or actually receive it as the same time that you receive it, you can actually put their email in that box there, comma separated. You can put as many as you want to. And now when those policies start to get violated, you can start parceling out the responsibility. Hey, that's a student safety risk. We're going to send that to that high school counselor, right? So you can get very granular with how you build these policies. These are for your content. Chuck, let's scroll up and we'll click on app policies. All right. And lastly, for our app policies here, you can build your policies based off of risk. You can build it based off of the category. You can say, you know what, I don't really care what the app category is, but it shouldn't have that much permission into my email, right? So you can actually set what scopes it has. And you can also build policies where you say, hey, I want to approve these certain things. So maybe you have educational games that the kids are allowed to use. Chuck, actually flip over to students real quick. And it'll be right there at the bottom. Wow, e-gaming, right? So you can say, hey, go ahead and go to that chess.com, go ahead and go over to these Magic School games. But all that Pokemon Go and Dragon Ball Z and all that, nah, we're gonna get rid of that, right? Here you go. Go ahead and police that. So you can literally build these app policies as granular as you need them to be. All right. Uh, Appreciate you all listening to me today. You've been a perfect audience, absolutely silent. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Chuck, and he is going to wrap it up today, just showing out the rest of these policies and our content filter. Chuck?
Thank you very much, John.
Yes, sir.
All right. So last policy section we have are the login policies. So tying back to what we talked about with that login activity there, this is where you can have the platform automate some of those things. So the platform sees login activity every 4 hours. So this is where you can come in and have the platform automatically say suspend an account or reset a user's password. And that reset password also doesn't just reset the user's password, it also ends the active session. So really handy that way too if you're running into issues where you may have a lot of compromised accounts or some kind of problem that way. You can also just warn the user. I don't see this used quite as often, but an option you have as well too. We have two primary policies, both in Google and Microsoft. First one here is looking for any suspicious successful logins from outside the US. This is a really common issue we see on the Google side, especially where Google will flag the login event as being suspicious, but it still lets the person into the account. So this will be helpful for keeping a close eye on those. And the other one's just looking for those successful logins from outside the US. From there, you can also, though, expand upon your policy. So we have two additional policies that can be added. Total login policy, so looking for total number of logins within that 4-hour time frame, and then number of distinct location logins in 4 hours. So looking for more of the hopping around. There's also one other policy. I don't see this used quite as often, but can be very valuable. We also do have policies that can be set by IP addresses. So if your students keep hitting the same VPN over and over again, same IP address ranges, you can set a policy up on that to take action as well too. So that'll be the Cloud Monitor product here, and I'm going to go ahead and hop over to our content filter here next. So the content filter is going to cover a different section. It's going to cover the content blocking and filtering and URL filtering here specifically. So our content filter here is an extension-based content filter. So it's deployed at the Google Chrome as a Google Chrome extension or a Microsoft Edge extension there. It'll follow the account around. So when someone signs into the browser, the extension's automatically deployed. It's going to start filtering based on any of the policies or things you've applied. Filters designed to be very lightweight, very flexible, so works really well in those environments. Works especially great with Chromebooks and devices like that. Of course, the core of any content filter is going to be the policy section. So just like any filter, we'll have an allow section. You can allow by sites, by categories. You can import from existing files or an existing global list. And then you can also set your policies in the Google side here. And that's going to be determined either by organizational unit or by Google groups here. So you can have different allow lists for your different OUs if you'd like. So in this case here, we can see we've got a couple different allow lists for the students here. We can also do category-based allow lists as well. And you can even allow through certain search terms based on keywords or based on regex patterns as well. More importantly, though, there is also a block list, of course. So you can certainly, same idea here, we can have different block lists for your overall organizational units or for the actual students themselves here. So we've got some different examples here. Now, this block also doesn't just extend to the individual websites. It certainly does a nice job, too, of looking at blocking embedded content as well. So, for example, if you've got some game sites or things that the students keep hitting, or there's some kind of embedded game URL, works quite well with that as well, too. And you've got options here. You can certainly add a site. You could block all your sites and just have an approved list. The allow list is going to override any of the blocks you've put in here. Again, some options to import from things. And then there's ways to configure notifications. You can have notifications go out right away. You can schedule notifications to go out at a specific time frame each day if you want. You can even have notifications on individual sites if necessary. And you can even choose to mute notifications if you say, hey, I know people are going to go to Facebook. I don't need to know that people are going to Facebook there. We will also have some pre-built categories ready to go as well too. So you'll see some different examples here. There's a lot of different categories you can go ahead and add in here. Once those categories are in place, you're able to go back in and preview those sites as well too. So you can see which sites are going to be blocked by the platform here. And then again, you can set those notifications up as well too from here, or do overall notifications on any of the category blocks. And then does also support blocks by search term as well too here. So you can go ahead and have those set up either by keywords or by regex patterns. One of our customers for content filter, Manuel Sanchez over at Azusa, Unified School District in California, used this quite extensively to help block a lot of the different search terms that students were getting into and things like that. So very handy for helping block some of those issues and problems he was running into on his Chromebooks there. Beyond the block list, we also do look at what we call risks. So risks work a lot like they do over on the Cloud Monitor side of things, but this is where we're looking at the input detection. And this input detection is very good. It doesn't just extend to what the students are searching and typing into the search bar or something like that. It's going to extend also to, say, an email or a Google Doc or other things like that, where students are pressing enter on the keyboard, they're putting in an actual input. The platform is going to look for those. So we've got some machine learning based models that are ready to go out of the box. This is something that um, Manuel over at Zusa found really handy, because this is something he wasn't aware of, as some of the bad language and things. He was having some issues with students using Instagram, using Discord, things like that, common things you might expect students to try to get into, and they were using very inappropriate language. So let him know right away there were some issues there. The risks here don't block anything. They're designed to give you notifications, though, if there's some kind of problem or issue with those inputs. So this works really well, too. If maybe a student's on an educational resource, they're where they're supposed to be, but they're putting in inappropriate inputs, it'll still give you some insight into that. So you can, again, set those notifications on the individual type of risk here, or you can do overall notifications on those risks as well. There's ways, again, of course, to add people who are going to receive those notifications there. Next up, we do also look at the YouTube side of things here as well. So there's options to block or allow things based on keywords, based on channels here, based on specific video types. We can even do analyzing an individual YouTube video, and you can even set this up for individual settings where you're blocking the sidebar, the live chat, or the comments as well too. And that's not just going to extend to the individual videos itself. I'll go ahead and hop over to YouTube here for a moment, but this is going to extend to when someone is browsing through YouTube. So this is something that we have blocked internally here. So you notice as I hover over the videos here, even if it's the shorts here, it's going to start blocking those as soon as I hover over those. This also works with embedded content as well too. So if something's embedded in a web page, say you're going to a specific site where that video has been embedded, it's going to go ahead and block that for you as well too. So works quite well to go ahead and block those videos and things as needed there too. And then lastly here, we've got the block and allow list page, so you can certainly change that if you'd like. And then more importantly, we've got violations here. So this is going to pull through the data of all the different violations that have occurred. You can also just look at general browsing activity if you'd like to as well. But if we scroll down here, you'll see some of the different things that are happening here. So we can see we've got a specific user in question, date and timestamp, the URL. We could do an access lookup if we wanted to get some further information about that as needed. And then we can also see the direct input that the user put in, and we can see what this was getting flagged at as well too. And then in a real environment, this is a test environment here, we would also see an external and internal IP address as well too. And you'll also see some things will just be on the block list. You can also go through and just look at URL specific blocks here. You can look at specific inputs directly. You can look for specific searches if that's going on. And then we do have this newer feature here called AI. This is going to be looking for inputs into ChatGPT and some of those other large language models, those AI products that are all the rage these days. So keep an eye out for some of those kinds of things as well. Give you some insight into that if students are hitting those and maybe using that for assignments or things like that when they shouldn't be. And then the final section of the content filter here I'm going to hop over to is going to be our devices section. So this is going to be looking at the device level side of things here. So it's going to provide a device ID, some basic information here about what's going on, last known location, when was the device last heard from. You've got options here to go into more details. You can also mark the device as lost or stolen. That will lock down the Chrome browser, or the Edge browser there for you. And then you can also go ahead and track the device. And this is going to go ahead and track the device's device by GPS. So it's going to be pretty precise with its coordinates there. It'll track for a 24-hour time period, but you can always re-enroll the device if for further tracking. But really handy in those situations where maybe somebody left their Chromebook somewhere and it's still in the building, but you're not exactly sure where it is, or there is a device that's been lost or stolen. So as soon as it's connected to the internet, it's going to go ahead and show you that that location information there, give you some insight that way as well too. So that's a feature we have in here as well too, to provide some enhancements to that. You also know too, if more than one student's accessing a device, you'll see that listed here as well. So we can see maybe the student's actually sharing a device for some reason. Is that anticipated? Maybe we've got an older brother that's taken away their younger sibling's device there. So these kinds of features can also be helpful as you're using the content filter there and keeping an eye on things. And again, you'll see there's that tracking there as well too. So certainly more features in content filters as well too. Here we can dive into accounts or some other areas. But I think that's probably a good stopping point for today, so we can get some questions answered here. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and we can start getting those questions answered there.
We wish everyone a great rest of your week. Have a great 3-day holiday weekend, and the adventure continues, folks. Thank you so much. Have a great day, John, Charles, everyone in the audience. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.